stories beyond imagination.
It began with nothing more than a whisper in the noise. Deep inside the Arecibo replacement station in Puerto Rico, a tired technician leaned over his console, listening to the endless hum of space. Most nights were predictable: radio bursts from pulsars, the hiss of solar wind, echoes of satellites tumbling across the void. But on that night, there was a flicker, a pattern too regular to be random. 3 short pulses, then 2 long ones, repeated with mathematical precision. At first he thought it was interference, perhaps a reflection off a communication satellite. But when he filtered the signal, his heart skipped. The source was not some far-off galaxy. It wasn't even from another star. It was coming from the dark side of the moon, where no human antenna or transmitter should exist. Within minutes, the message was escalated through secure channels. The world didn't know it yet, but humanity had just stumbled onto a secret that would rewrite its place in the cosmos. By dawn, the world's leading astrophysicists were summoned into urgent video conferences. The United Nations kept the news tightly classified, but whispers spread like wildfire through academic circles. A signal from the moon? Impossible, said the skeptics. The lunar surface was barren, lifeless, scarred by eons of meteors and silence. Yet the data was undeniable. The pulses carried not just rhythm, but encoded complexity, too deliberate to be geological noise. In Geneva, a young scientist named Dr. Elara Myles stared at the spectrogram, her pulse quickening. She had spent her career chasing hypothetical alien whispers across interstellar space, never imagining the first true message would come from the celestial body hanging so close above Earth. As politicians debated secrecy and ownership, Elara whispered to herself, "We've been looking outward for so long, but maybe they've been right above us all along." The revelation triggered a silent war behind closed doors. Governments scrambled to claim jurisdiction over the moon's dark side, citing treaties, military rights, and technological superiority. The Americans argued they had first pick, given their Apollo legacy. China countered with their recent lunar missions. Russia warned that if anyone attempted unilateral action, it would be considered an act of aggression. Hidden beneath the political bluster was raw fear. If the signal was proof of alien intelligence, then control over it meant control over humanity's future. Was this discovery a gift or a trap? What if the message wasn't a greeting but a warning? The moon, once a symbol of human curiosity and conquest, had suddenly become the most contested piece of territory in history. For Dr. Myles and her colleagues, the question was not who owned the moon, but whether humanity was ready to answer a call it did not understand. In a heavily guarded hangar in Houston, preparations began for a mission cloaked in secrecy. The public was told it was another routine test for deep space propulsion. Nothing unusual. But behind the sealed glass of classified briefings, a select group of astronauts and scientists learned the truth. Their objective? Land on the dark side of the moon, locate the source of the signal, and determine its origin. The crew was carefully chosen: military-trained pilots, engineers with nerves of steel, and specialists in astrobiology and cryptography. Dr. Elara Myles, to her shock, found herself recruited as the mission's scientific lead. Her expertise in decoding complex signals made her indispensable, yet she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her chest. Humans had always reached for the moon as a symbol of progress. Now, for the first time, it felt like as the crew trained in simulated lunar environments, the signal continued to pulse from the far side, steady as a heartbeat. Every attempt to decode it revealed layers of structure: fractals, prime numbers, harmonics that echoed Earth's own languages but never fully aligned. It was as if the sender wanted to be understood, but left just enough ambiguity to taunt the mind. Was it a distress call? A beacon? A trap? Late at night, Elara listened to the recording in her bunk, feeling a chill each time the sequence repeated. The signal felt alive, patient, almost watching. Humanity had always gazed at the moon and imagined it dead. But if the signal was real, then the lunar silence had been an illusion. Something waited on the dark side, and it had chosen this moment in history to speak. The mission, codenamed Lunar Echo, sparked unease even within its own ranks. Not all astronauts trusted the secrecy. Captain Marcus Hale, the mission commander, had flown combat sorties in war zones where silence was as deadly as bullets. He disliked mysteries, especially those cloaked in politics. "If this is just a science mission, why are we armed?" he muttered, glancing at the prototype railgun discreetly loaded into their cargo bay. The engineers shrugged, unwilling to admit they didn't know either. Officially, the weapon was defensive equipment for unforeseen hazards. But Marcus suspected the truth. Some leaders feared what they might find enough to prepare for war, even if it meant fighting on the lunar surface. Humanity was venturing into the dark with both microscopes and rifles, not sure which would prove more necessary. Weeks later, under a veil of global distraction, a staged political summit, a flood of news about unrelated crises, the Lunar Echo mission quietly left Earth. Families and journalists waved at what they believed to be a standard test: flight. Only the crew knew the gravity of their task. As the rocket roared skyward, Dr. Elara Myles pressed her helmet against the glass. Staring as Earth shrank into a marble, she wondered how many other civilizations had looked back at their homeworld for the last time, moments before discovering truths that reshaped them forever. In the cabin, silence ruled, each astronaut retreating into private thoughts. The pulse of the alien signal was loaded into the ship's computers, looping endlessly. It was not just data anymore. It felt like a soundtrack to destiny, a summons pulling them across the void. 3 days into the journey, the moon loomed closer, a silent guardian draped in shadows. The crew had orbited it before in simulations, but reality was harsher. The dark side was a canvas of black rock and endless craters, hidden from Earth since the beginning of time. No radio transmissions penetrated it, no telescopes could map its full secrets. As the spacecraft slid into orbit, comms with Earth weakened until they were little more than static. Captain Hale gave the order to switch to onboard encryption systems. From this point forward, they were truly alone. As they rounded the lunar limb, the signal's strength increased, flooding their instruments with clarity. The pulses sharpened into geometric patterns, as if responding to their arrival. It was undeniable. Whatever was sending this had been waiting for them. The lander detached with a metallic shudder, descending toward a jagged canyon on the far side, known only from satellite scans. No human eye had ever seen this ground directly. As thrusters fired, dust plumed in eerie silence, rising like ghosts into the airless void. Elara's breath caught when she spotted something that no geological formation could explain: a circle of perfect symmetry etched into the canyon floor. It was enormous, kilometers across, its grooves aligned with the stars overhead. The signal was strongest here, pounding through their instruments like a heartbeat. "It's artificial," whispered one of the engineers. Marcus Hale kept his tone steady, though even he couldn't hide the awe. "Set us down. If someone built this, we need to know who." The lander touched down inside the circle. Humanity's first footprint on forbidden ground. Stepping onto the lunar surface, the crew expected desolation. Instead, they found monoliths, towering black spires protruding from the crater floor, casting impossible shadows under the weak sunlight. Their surfaces were smooth, reflective, untouched by micrometeorites, as if time itself had spared them. The structures hummed faintly, vibrating in rhythm with the signal. Elara pressed a gloved hand against one and felt a tingling rush through her arm, like static electricity but deeper, alive. The crew circled cautiously, their voices hushed despite the radios in their helmets. This was no natural formation. Someone or something had been here long before humanity dreamed of rockets, and whatever they left behind was still functioning. Still waiting for what? None of them dared to guess. The moon was no longer dead rock, it was a vault. As they moved between the monoliths, the ground beneath their boots shifted. Seismic sensors registered faint tremors. Rhythmic and deliberate, a low rumble spread across the crater floor until one of the spires split open with a hiss of escaping gas. Beneath it yawned a tunnel, smooth and metallic, spiraling downward into blackness. The signal spiked in intensity, rattling their headsets with distorted echoes. Marcus hesitated, torn between protocol and instinct. But the truth was undeniable. This was the source. With lights mounted and weapons at the ready, the crew descended into the moon itself, their footsteps echoing in corridors carved not by nature, but by design. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly, like the veins of a living creature. Patterns ran across the surface, glowing faint blue, shifting in response to their movement. The air, impossibly, was breathable, though metallic in taste. "This isn't ruins," Elara whispered, her voice trembling through comms. "It's still alive." The deeper they went, the stronger the hum grew, resonating in their bones. Instruments recorded gravitational anomalies. Their weight fluctuated, as if the moon's pull was being adjusted by unseen mechanisms. The realization chilled them. The moon was no lifeless satellite. It was a construct, engineered on a scale beyond human comprehension. The crew's radios crackled with interference, but through the noise came faint words. Not alien, not unknown, human voices. Fragments of English, Russian, Mandarin, overlapping like echoes from another world. Some were pleas, others commands. One voice made Marcus freeze. It was his own, distorted, repeating words he had not spoken. Elara caught fragments of her late father's accent, though he had died years before. "It's pulling from our minds," she realized, horrified. "It's using memory as language." The moon was not just transmitting, it was listening, and it was speaking back in the most intimate way possible. The tunnel widened into a colossal chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. At its center stood a sphere of black stone suspended in midair, rotating slowly. Each rotation projected bursts of starlight across the chamber walls, forming constellations no human chart had ever mapped. But among the alien stars, familiar patterns glimmered. The Milky Way, Earth's constellations, our sun. Embedded among them were markers, like scars showing entire star systems crossed out. "Extinctions," Elara murmured. The chamber wasn't just a map. It was a record of civilizations that had come before, and those already erased. Humanity's star was still glowing, for now. As Elara analyzed the sphere's pulses, she realized the signal was not an invitation, but a warning. Layered within the mathematics were countdowns, repeating sequences that aligned with cycles of solar activity. The message was simple yet devastating. When your species becomes capable of reaching us, you must turn back. Do not awaken what sleeps here. But it was already too late. The crew's presence had activated dormant systems. The monoliths above hummed louder, sending fresh waves of the signal toward Earth. Humanity's curiosity had triggered an alarm across the stars. Tension fractured the crew. Commander Marcus wanted to seal the chamber and leave, preserving what they'd seen as evidence. But one of the engineers, Dr. Leon Varick, saw opportunity. "This is technology beyond anything Earth has," he argued. "Do you realize what this could mean for energy, for power? We'd be fools to walk away." While the others debated, Leon slipped toward the sphere, pressing his gloved hand to its surface. The chamber roared to life, symbols cascading across the walls. The moon itself shuddered as if waking from sleep. Leon turned, eyes wild. "We can control it!" But the look on Elara's face said otherwise. They had unleashed something far beyond control. Alarms blared through their suits as gravity buckled. The chamber twisted, folding in impossible geometries. The surface above cracked open, sending plumes of dust into lunar orbit. From Earth, telescopes would soon see the moon's dark side glowing. The sphere expanded, its surface peeling back like petals of a flower, revealing intricate machinery pulsing with light. Patterns cascaded outward into space, messages or perhaps beacons. Elara fell to her knees, overwhelmed. "It's not just a construct. It's a transmitter. And we've just turned it back on." Across the void, something ancient would now know the moon was awake again. The crew scrambled for the exit, but corridors shifted like a maze, trapping them inside. Marcus fired the railgun into the walls, the kinetic blast ricocheting but leaving no mark. Leon shouted that they had to stay, to master the technology before others arrived. But every moment inside drained them. Suits flickered, memories blurred. Elara began losing track of who she was, fragments of other lives bleeding into her thoughts. A child playing under alien suns, a soldier dying in a war not her own. The machine wasn't just broadcasting, it was rewriting them. The price of knowledge was identity itself. In a smaller chamber, they stumbled across frozen bodies, humanoid, but not human. Encased in crystalline sarcophagi, their faces were unfamiliar yet eerily expressive. Each had an interface embedded into their skulls, wires stretching into the walls. These were not builders. They were prisoners, linked eternally to the machine. Elara realized with horror The moon's intelligence fed on consciousness, preserving fragments to use as voices, memories, warnings. The echoes they heard weren't tricks. They were the minds of those consumed. If they stayed, they too would become part of its archive. Whispers for future trespassers to hear. Marcus faced the bitter truth. The only way out was to shut down the sphere, even if it meant destroying the entire chamber. He ordered the crew to rig their explosives, their contingency, for a surface emergency. Leon resisted, brandishing a sidearm. "You'd blow up the greatest discovery in history?" He raged. "This is our key to the stars!" But Marcus's voice was iron. "If this gets to Earth, it won't be our key. It'll be our executioner." For a tense moment, the two men stood at the edge of violence, the hum of alien power between them. Then the chamber itself decided, rumbling like thunder. When the explosives were armed, Marcus realized the blast radius would not leave enough time for escape. Someone had to stay behind to ensure detonation. He looked at his crew, Elara, pale but defiant, the engineers trembling, Leon seething with betrayal. Marcus made the choice. "Get them home," he told Elara, pressing the trigger device into her hands. She shook her head violently, tears streaking inside her helmet. "We can find another way." But Marcus smiled faintly. "There's never another way, not in war." As he turned back toward the sphere, the alien light reflected across his visor like a star dying. The survivors fled upward, lungs burning in the thin air. Behind them, Marcus planted the charges around the sphere, his voice steady over comms until the end. "Tell Earth, curiosity isn't free." Then the channel went silent. A blinding flare ripped through the chamber, collapsing walls, shattering monoliths. The ground convulsed, ejecting plumes of dust miles high. From orbit, the explosion looked like a second sunrise on the moon's dark side. Elara's lander launched seconds later, riding shockwaves into the void, leaving behind both a grave and a warning. The moon settled once more into silence, but not entirely. The journey back to Earth was quiet, haunted. Leon sat shackled, eyes hollow with rage and regret. The others avoided speaking of what they'd seen. Only Elara worked tirelessly, replaying fragments of the signal now stored in the ship's core. Pieces of the alien warning still survived. Tangled in mathematics she couldn't yet unravel. Each loop whispered the same chilling truth. Do not awaken what sleeps. As Earth grew larger in the windows, she wondered whether they had already failed. The signal had been amplified before the destruction. It was out there now, echoing across space, reaching ears they could not imagine. Back on Earth, the mission was buried in classified reports. Official statements declared it a failed test flight. With Marcus Hale lost in an accident, the world mourned briefly, then moved on. But Elara couldn't forget. Each night she stood under the sky, staring at the pale circle of the moon. It looked unchanged, serene, eternal. Yet she knew beneath its surface lay ruins of unimaginable scale and perhaps remnants of what they failed to destroy. Sometimes she thought she still heard the pulse in the wind, faint and steady, as if the moon itself was breathing, watching, waiting. In the end, the story of the silent signal from the dark side is not about discovery but about warning. Humanity sought answers, and instead found a mirror reflecting its own hunger for knowledge and power. The moon, once a symbol of innocence, is now a threshold, a line we crossed without understanding the cost. Elara left her final words sealed in a hidden report. If the moon speaks again, do not answer. Not all doors should be opened. And yet, above us, the lunar face still shines, ancient and patient. The question remains, when it calls again, will we resist? Or will curiosity lead us once more into the dark?